My name is Bruno Bianchi Sarcone. I run Spainguru.es and this is the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa free webinar. Today is August 28th, 2025. A little bit about Spainguru.es. Our objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. We have some wonderful reviews out there on Trustpilot and on Google. So you're in very good hands. You can use Spainguru.es for absolutely free. You can join our weekly newsletter that I send every Monday, where I feature the top discussions on social media about the different visas, different articles, and most watched video of the week and investigation blog posts. For example, today I published 2 blog posts about where are British and Americans renting in Spain, with rankings, with percentages, and it's pretty interesting. So stay updated with the weekly newsletter. Then you can also watch the YouTube channel with almost 1,000 videos. About 25% of them are about Digital Nomad Visa and almost 2,000 articles in our blog. And of course, Spainguru's community with an aggregated total of 150,000 members. For the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa Facebook group, it's one of the most important dedicated groups with 17,000 members that I highly recommend you joining today, where you can ask your questions anonymously or not. You can share your thoughts, you can read others' first-hand experiences, ask for advice, etc., etc. So definitely a lot of value there that you can access via Spainguru.es for absolutely free. And of course, I have personally vetted experts in each of the fields, like immigration experts and tax advisors. At least I recommend you engaging with immigration and tax experts before coming to Spain, just to make sure that your ideas are applicable in reality and you understand the implications of your move in terms of immigration and taxes. And then, of course, potentially you would need visa-compliant health insurances, medical certificates, sworn translations, apostille services, and many more services that I have personally vetted over the years in Spainguru.es. So definitely you are in good hands. And those are, of course, the only paid services that you will find on Spainguru. The rest is absolutely free. The moving to Spain checklist, the destinations on Spainguru, etc. So enough about Spainguru. Let's talk about the webinar's objectives of today. Hopefully you will get by the end of this webinar the key changes of the DNV in 2025, step-by-step requirements, documentation, what taxes and social security implications you will have, and renewal process, what's changed, what's new in 2025, and how to avoid common mistakes in your application, right? So this is the timeline or content of this webinar: introduction, terminology, the updates, the requirements, the documentations, taxes and numbers, and the renewal, right? So let's talk about the terminology first, so we speak the same language. First of all, what is the UGE? Unidad de Grandes Empresas. It's the office that processes the Digital Nomad Visa, okay? So you can process the visa from within Spain, directly at the UGE via online processing or at Spanish consulates. Then there is apostille. What is the apostille? It's a certification so that you make foreign documents valid in front of Spanish authorities, okay? The country must be part of the Hague Convention. Not all the countries are part of it, but many are, right? So it's a way to legalize those documents. Sworn translators. These are special translators, specific translators appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Not every translator is a sworn translator, okay? You can find sworn translators on Spainguru.es. You can send them documents completely digitally by email. You don't need to send physical emails. They send you the translations with their digital signature. You print them out and that's what you submit, okay? Or you send the PDFs when you apply. A1 certificate and certificate of coverage. The A1 certificate is the certificate that states that you will be paying Social Security in your home country. At the moment, only United Kingdom and USA Social Security certificates or A1s are being accepted by Spanish authorities. Autónomo. Autónomo is when you move to Spain as a freelancer, as a contractor or 1099 in the States, you become an autónomo in Spain. Okay, so this is the legal status for self-employed in Spain. Okay, and you will have to register with the tax authorities and with Social Security office in Spain. Empadronamiento or padrón. This is the registration of your rental contract at the city hall in the city of remote arrangement. Okay. As we said, the certificate of courage will avoid you to pay Social Security in Spain, as contractors do. Who may not qualify for this? Self-employed or S-corp owners who often don't meet the Social Security offices of US-based business criteria. And if you own more than 25% of a company, it could potentially trigger legal tax issues in Spain. Okay, and here you can see how to obtain the certificate of coverage from the US in 5 easy steps. I have an article on Spainguru.es if you wanna dig more into this. Okay, but basically you do it online. The employer starts, you do it online, and it takes about, if I'm not wrong, between 4 to 8 weeks to obtain. So you need to plan ahead, right? More major changes to 2025. In general, there are more documents are required now, more apostilles, especially company apostilles now, and there are more checks about companies for business owners. Okay, because in the past, certain business owners, they got off the shelf companies that really didn't show activity. What they want to make sure is that it is a real company operating truly in the market. Okay, so they want to see that, right? So there are stricter checks. And then also, professional experience must be backed by official evidence. So if you're not applying with a university degree or a master's degree, and you want to apply with 3 years of experience, more scrutiny, right? Remember that the Beckham law, as we just mentioned, only applies to certain cases, mostly employees, okay, working remotely for non-Spanish companies. Another thing to have in mind is that a lot of people recommend applying from Spain because the process is more streamlined, but really UGE decisions can be quite inconsistent. So you need to be prepared to adapt, okay? And even people with strong cases get rejections, but then potentially could apply again, twisting some documentations and then get your approval. Okay. Now, renewals are now treated nearly the same as new applications, so you need to be very meticulous and plan in advance before your renewals of your visa, right? Let's talk about apostilles and legalizations, okay? And again, this is what's required now in 2025 versus previous years. Now, company registration certificates must be apostilled. Tax or social security reports used as work proof require an apostille as well. Marriage, birth, and civil partnership certificates need apostilles. They always need it, okay? But also remember that you have to obtain new copies of the originals because they have a certain validity period between 3 or 6 months, depending on the document. And they need to be apostilled by the authorities who issued them and sworn translated to Spanish. Documents from outside of Spain must be legalized, okay, and apostilled under the Hague Convention. So, for example, if you've been working in Dubai, okay, in UAE, it's not part of the Hague Convention, so you will need to legalize this at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Dubai, okay, these documents, right, or the authorities who issued them, right? And again, for official documents from authorities, okay, the translations must be official, sworn translations, right? When they're not in Spanish, of course, because if you provide official documents from countries where the official language is in Spanish and the document is in Spanish, for example, Colombia, Mexico, etc., you don't need to sworn translate those documents into Spanish, right? So it's important that you review your case because depending on your case, you're going to be required one thing or another. Now, let's talk about business owners because now they're facing extra scrutiny. So you should expect more investigations on your case because authorities now require proof of your company is active and legitimate, as we said before, to avoid, people applying with off-the-shelf or inactive companies. So in this case, you would need to submit company tax returns, invoices and contracts, proof of business expense or investment, evidence of clients and services delivered, okay? Just to make sure the company is not a zombie company. If your company has your name or is a family-owned company, more scrutiny again. And for small or self-owned companies, provide proof of ownership, activity, and client relationships, okay? So via all this documentation that I just shared with you. This is important to know, as many people apply with their own companies or companies even that have their own name on them. Now, we mentioned that there's two ways to qualify for this visa, either with a university master degree or without it. If you move as an employee working for a foreign company, then you could potentially be eligible for this special tax regime that lasts 5 years plus one, okay, where you pay this 24% tax rate called the Beckham law, okay? But if you're moving as a contractor, it's going to be very, very, very unlikely that that happens, okay? So yeah, remember that. In the past, some people were saying that potentially you could pay 15% tax, or you could pay this flat rate of 24%, but be careful, because it is not being holder of the digital nomad visa that makes you eligible for different tax treatments. It is your job relationship, right? So mainly employee versus contractor. So be careful with that. And mentioning again, going deeper into the unpredictable UGE decisions that we mentioned, some things that has happened this year is that requirements and interpretations varied depending on the different cases. Even if you were applying with strong applications, there has been rejections. Also, I've seen people in the groups that applied and they got a denial. It wasn't very clear why, and then they reapplied and they got approved. They didn't change anything in the second application and still got approved. So quite erratic at some points, okay, but still better than applying at the consulates, okay? The consulates are even more erratic in their decisions and in the interpretations of the rules and documentations, okay, that they demand. Appeals are usually time consuming, so they're never recommended, okay? They take several months, so it's probably better to just apply again, okay? A new application, right? And for this, it's important that you apply the first time with enough time within Spain, if you're doing it from Spain, because you know that you normally would have like 90 days in a 180-day period, right? So it's better to have time to reapply. Replying with clear and reorganized documents often works better, okay? It's just changing slightly the application and explain better. And also things that happen, depending who is reviewing your application, you would have one outcome or another. Unfortunately, Spanish bureaucracy can be like that. And timing matters. Decision around holidays may be stricter or rushed. So holidays is summertime, August, etc. And Christmas time, those are the biggest holiday seasons, okay? So they still work. They still provide decisions, okay? But many people also, many of the civil servants take holidays around those times, so they're normally understaffed, and that can create some sort of rushed or stricter decisions, okay? Now let's move to the requirements of this visa, and this is of course more the formal part, not so much talking about news, but specifically about how this visa is structured and what they require from you. So the core eligibility criteria for the DNV is that you make at least 2,763 euros per month in 2025, right? And this is calculated from the minimum salary, or SMI, Salario Mínimo Interprofesional in Spain, on a 14 payments per year base, not 12 months, but 14, okay? And then divided by 12. So yes, you need to make about 2,800 euros for the main applicants. You need to show that you work remotely for a non-Spanish company and that you have non-Spanish clients, maximum 20% of Spanish sourced income, either university degree or at least 3 years of relevant professional experience, provide a clean criminal record for the past 5 years, and if you live in different countries, you need to get all those police checks, prove your employer or clients have existed for at least 1 year, and confirm your work is performed remotely using digital tools. So not every job can qualify for this visa. Looking more into the the funding requirements, as we said, the minimum salary in Spain multiplied, the monthly salary multiplied by 14 is is about 15,000 euros, okay? So for the main applicant or one applicant, the requirement is 200%, okay, of the minimum salary. Sorry, 16,576 euros in 14 payments, okay, divided 12, right? So it's 2,763 euros. Now, if you're applying with a couple, okay, with the first dependent, let's say, it's 75% for the second one, so less funding required. So together you would have to be making 3,790. And invoices, company certificate with apostilles now, proving your employer or client has existed for at least 1 year, proof of qualifications or 3 years of relevant experience. We went through that. Criminal background check and signed declaration for all the countries where you live in the last five years. Private health insurance in some cases. Okay, it is not a requirement, but it is highly recommended, especially if you stay longer. We're going to talk about that. Passport application form, payments, receipt, and a photo. And remember that official documents should be apostilled or legalized at the very least if they're not part of the Hague Convention, and soon translated into Spanish if necessary. If you apply as an employee, or also called W2 in the States, let's talk about the certificate of coverage, right? So there are basically two ways. If you're applying as an employee, your company either supplies a certificate of coverage stating that you're paying social security in your country, only USA and UK are accepted now, or your company has to open a company in Spain, or maybe your company already has a company in Spain. So they will pay your social security in Spain, Spanish Social Security Office, and you work as an employee in Spain. Those are the two options. Otherwise,
Just a quick moment. Over 60% of you watching right now aren't subscribed. That's a lot of people getting value without hitting that button. If my videos have helped you understand Spain's immigration process, visas, or life here even just once, please subscribe now. I'm working hard to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, and your click truly makes a difference. Thanks so much. Now, let's keep going.
you need to apply as a contractor or autónomo, right? Now, if you're paying social security in any of the countries, you don't need a private health insurance. All the other cases, you will need a private health insurance that is the same, offers the same coverage as the social security in Spain, okay, or the public healthcare sector in Spain. So if you're applying as an employee, now that we have mentioned this, also your employer must confirm your remote status and your job duties. Everything has to match. W2 form can support your income, but it's not enough by itself. You will need a certificate of coverage, okay, from your home country, as we said. And If you don't provide the certificate of coverage, we said that you need either your company needs to open a company in Spain, or you need to pay Social Security in Spain as a contractor, right? Also recommended a signed letter confirming no impact on Spain labor market was also helpful. Okay, it's not a requirement, but many lawyers recommend doing so or submitting that, right? So we mentioned already the advantages and disadvantages for people who have the versatility or the possibility to apply as an employee or as a contractor. There are pros and cons for each of them, right? So here you have a comparison table, okay? But generally, applying as an employee has more advantages than applying as a contractor, okay? But it is a little bit less flexible, the application process, okay? That as a contractor, applying as a contractor is much easier, okay? But it doesn't provide so many good things as being as an employee, okay? Like potentially being eligible for the Peckham law. This is one of the most important perks, okay? But yeah, I will send you a recording of this video in case you want to watch that. Table is a bit long. Now let's continue, okay? Let's talk about the certificate of coverage for US, Canada, and other countries. In the United States, you request SSA 101 or 102 forms, and you must show you remain covered by the US Social Security. In Canada, you will request a certificate of coverage from Service Canada, and for EU or associated countries and the UK is the A1 certificate, okay? Now, the certificate, if you're applying with a certificate of coverage, it must cover the full duration of your initial visa, okay? So for example, if you apply with a certificate that it lasts only 2 years, which is the maximum right now for the A1, they will grant you the digital nomad residency in Spain for that maximum time, 2 years, right? If it expires, you may have to follow other pathways if you want to stay in Spain, okay? So potentially register as self-employed, or as I said, other pathways that we're going to talk about later, potentially arraigo, etc. Okay, it's important that you apostille the certificate and you sworn translate it. Okay, now, is this a viable option that employers pay Spanish Social Security? Usually, companies don't want to follow this path because it's a complex and often costly process. Okay, so usually they are not really open to open a company in Spain unless they already have one. Okay, in that case, potentially that could also be a possibility. Okay, so the way to overcome this block potential is to turn yourself into a contractor, okay, and start invoicing your company and apply as a contractor in Spain. So it's important that you clarify this before moving to starting gathering documentation, because depending how you apply, it's going to be one way or another, and different kinds of documentation that you need to supply, right? Now, if you're going self-employed, how and when you register, right? When do you become legally a self-employed autonomo in Spain, right? It will depend where you have applied for the digital nomad visa. If you applied at a consulate and you enter Spain already with your visa granted, it's one if you enter Spain with your visa approved from a consulate, you need to register ASAP as an autonomo, okay? And if you enter Spain as a tourist and you apply from Spain, you get your visa granted. After your visa is granted, you need to register as autónomo. Okay. It is not absolutely clear how long time you have to register. Okay, but you have to do it ASAP. Right. Now, another question, a question that people are asking: do I need a physical residency card in order to register as autónomo in Spain, or can I just register immediately or directly after the visa approval? You don't need a residency card to register as autónomo. This is important because, again, to obtain the residency card, you will need to go through the police or foreign office, and you will have to request an appointment, the TA appointment, so that you go there, they take your fingerprints, you show your documentation, your empadronamiento, okay, and that takes time. It can take weeks, even months, okay, so you can't wait until you get your residency card, and it is not a requirement, but people report that many gestores or tax advisors say that you need a TA to register, but they aren't aware that you don't, in fact. And most people, if you want to be compliant, you need to register for Autónomo ASAP, regardless if you have your TA card. In the case that you have the TA card, okay, it could happen. It could be a bit exceptional, really, but usually most of people will register as Autónomo before obtaining the residency card. Can a criminal record affect your application? Yes, it can. Okay, and depending how serious your records are, it could be a straight denial or not, right? Remember that you must provide police checks for all the places where you lived for the past 5 years, okay? And even minor offenses can trigger delays or even the rejections. What are the authorities looking for? Serious criminal convictions, okay, like violence, conviction time, and so on, and especially fraud, drug-related offenses, or repeated offenses. Yes. So yeah, this is important, right? So if you're gonna apply with these offenses, and potentially these are, from long time ago, potentially it is necessary before applying to go through the expungement processes, try to delete those records because enough time has passed, okay? Or if you're planning to apply with these records, always go with legal help, okay, with professional help, because they can tell you out of experience whether you have a chance or not, or if there's any way to mitigate those records in a way, because there are. So yeah, that's important, right? So apart from this, you will also sign a declaration confirming no pending criminal charges, okay, for the time that you are not covered by your police checks. There's a Q&A session at the end. Remember to ask your questions in the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you have to leave early, but you think the information that I'm sharing with you today is useful, you're learning something new, or you just want to help me, please leave a review on Trustpilot. On the top, there's a red button that redirects you there, and a nice review. I will always, always, always be grateful with you, and will be praying that your digital nomad visa is granted very, very soon. Now let's continue. Do you need a degree? No, of course, as we mentioned, there's one option, is university diploma in a relevant field, must be directly related to the job or role that you're performing. That must be legalized, officially translated, okay? And the degrees must be graduate or postgraduate level, okay, from recognized institutions, and again, matching with your current job. Or then there are at least 3 years of professional experience, directly related to remote work, and supported with official documents, as we saw. Now, how you prove the freelance and contract experience? You have to submit a CV, okay, that must be translated with simple translation with your application. Include client letters confirming work history, scope, timelines, dates, etc. The official documentations depending on where you apply from, okay, or from where the companies or the roles were performed. It's important to be meticulous and organized and make it easy for the officer that is reviewing your case, so that you do it, or in an organized way, and you explain it, okay, either by client or by year for clarity. And it's important that everything has to match and all the information has to be consistent. Okay, that there are no interpretations of what you do. Okay, it's not clear what you do, or there are different types of roles out there. So that's important. Okay. If you're planning to bring your family, you can do it. Okay. You're bringing children, adult dependents, and elderly parents, right? So there are different categories. If you're bringing children of less than 18 years, minor children, birth certificates, proof of financial support, and school plans is helpful, okay, to provide, but at least the birth certificate that proves the relationship, right? And always apostille and sworn translated. For adult children of more than 18 but less than 26, must show full-time studies, financial dependence, proof of living with parents, okay? And there are also other helpful documentations. But if the adult children are more than 18 and over 26, okay, you need to prove that they're medically dependent, okay, that they're incapable and they're medically dependent. So you need to provide official incapacity documentation in that case. Otherwise, they need to apply for themselves as main applicants, right? Adopted children also include a court ruling confirming legal guardianship and adoption, and parents or in-laws. Parents must prove real, stable financial and physical dependence, such as full support via bank transfers and medical dependency. Cases are assessed individually. So if you're planning to bring your parents and in-laws, also you need to prepare this in advance so that there are transactions that can prove that they're financially dependent from you. Okay, so that's important. Bringing children, again, there's the possibility to apply first, okay, and then your family comes later. So it's important to notice certain timelines here. If family members apply later, okay, extra documentation is required. For self-employed applicants, you must be fully registered as an autónomo before your dependents apply, okay, and this can take time. So be careful with that. Do you need private health insurance? Let's talk about it. Not everyone needs it, okay? In the case of Digital Nomad Visa, as per the requirements, since you'll be paying Social Security in one place or another, usually you don't need as a requirement to have a compliant health insurance policy that covers you, right? But, and it's a big but there, we're going to talk about that. If you're covered by a valid A1 certificate of coverage or foreign Social Security, you don't need a private health insurance. If you register as self-employed in Spain, you will be covered by Spanish public healthcare. So when you promise to register, and you promise that you will be part of Social Security, then it won't be a requirement by the UGE. Okay. If neither of these applies, you'll need a private health insurance that has no copayments or deductibles, offers full coverage in Spain, and is valid for the entire duration of your visa, at least 1 year. Now, there's an important but here, and recently someone was asking in the Digital Nomad Visa group, Spainguru group on Facebook. Okay, is it a requirement for me to have the private health insurance? And the important thing is that when you enter Spain, when you apply for the Digital Nomad Visa from within Spain, the date in which your visa is granted, it's when your residency starts. Now, if you don't have a private health insurance when your visa is granted, also known as your residency starts, and some time passes and then you register as autonomo with the social security, there is a gap of coverage since your residency starts and when you get effective access to public healthcare in Spain. Now, this gap can be a big problem when you apply later for long-term residency, because one of the requirements is that you were, let's say, a legal resident in Spain for minimum 5 years, and you can't have gaps in public in healthcare coverage, right? So if you plan to stay for the longer term in Spain, think about this and get at least a compliant coverage for those gaps. Okay, at least a few months. Okay, maybe you overlap, but you're already planning for the future so that you don't have any gaps and you are eligible for long-term residency later on, or you don't have to wait longer to be eligible, right? So it's important to understand this. And talking more about the long-term residency, after 5 years of uninterrupted legal residency, remember that you can maximum be outside of Spain 10 months in the previous 5 years, maximum out 10 months. Those months don't need to be consecutive, but they cannot be more than 6 months in one single block. Now, if you need compliant health insurance, I highly recommend you going to Spainguru.es. I put you in contact with my recommended exclusive agent from Adeslas, Mr. Carlos Blanco, who is also an expert immigration lawyer, knows the ins and outs of the Digital Nomad Visa. He can also help you with the application of the Digital Nomad Visa, and also has start date extension, so he can start the health insurance coverage whenever you need, so you don't pay for months that you don't use. So it's really, really interesting. And of course, it's non-binding, absolutely. You just, if you want to get a quote, just fill the form. He will send you a quote, and there's no savings as well. Now let's talk a little bit more in detail into this situation, okay? But it is important you understand that the digital nomad visa spirit of this visa is that it is based on active income, okay? Not savings, but ongoing recurrent earnings, right? Um, if you show savings, it could help. For example, if you are slightly below your income threshold, if you're bringing more family members, if you're self-employed but there's a big variations in your monthly income, okay? But remember, this won't be able to replace your funding threshold from uh, providing recurrent active earnings, okay? So how you could demonstrate the savings via bank statements with your names. You have to provide certificates from the banks, saying that you are the owner of this certain bank account. It was opened on certain date, and this is the balance of the account, etc. And these are the bank statements and the movements, right? And potentially you could use fixed terms deposits or investment accounts, as long as these are readily available without penalties. Okay, so that it is liquid money, something that you have to wait to obtain. And yes, and the documentation that supports this, okay, from the bank or the institutions that hold your money. We mentioned already when you have to register for Autónomo once you are in Spain, okay? And I'm gonna take off this because I cannot read the titles. Let's talk about the pros and cons of applying from within Spain. A lot of people are asking this, and of course there are pros and cons, okay? It's not all pros. Definitely it's better to apply from Spain if you can, but not everything is an advantage, right? So the pros of doing it from Spain: you don't need to wait in your home country. You enter Spain as a tourist and you apply once you're here. It is faster to schedule an appointment because you can apply online directly with the UGE portal, okay? So there are no consulate delays. In the consulate, you need to get an appointment in the consulate, and sometimes this is a big bottleneck. The process is more streamlined. The consulates are a bit more erratic than the UGE, if you will. There is greater control over your move. Logistically, you come already to Spain, you already settle a house, you get school for your kids. Whereas if you are waiting, let's say no man's land, waiting for your visa from a consulate, then all those logistics are not in place yet, and then you need to move later on. The approval, this is probably the biggest advantage of applying from Spain. If you apply with an FND contract, you get a residency for up to 3 years instead of 1 from the consulate. So this is really, really important because, as we talked before, renewals are almost the same as applying for the first time. And the cons: there is a strict 90-day window for applying from Spain, the Schengen rules. You need to have a stamped passport or police registration, okay, or declaración de entrada to apply. And your visa will start immediately, as we mentioned before, potentially bringing problems in the coverage gap. So yes, you cannot choose your start date, whereas if you apply from a consulate, you can in the form you can suggest getting your visa start date in the future. Now, some risks if you are denied is that no appeal process, or it is highly not recommended to appeal, and better potentially if you don't have any more days in your visa, in your stay permit, potentially you will have to leave and reapply from the home country, okay, or let enough time in order to come back to Spain as a tourist and apply. So all those potential logistic problems, okay. Now I have asked in a poll in the group, about 80% applied from Spain, and 20% applied from the consulate abroad. And the steps, it's normally the timeline would look simply like this. You would prepare your documents. That would take you about 1 to 3 months, closer to 3 months than 1, really, the documentation. But of course, you need to, if you're applying as a contractor, you will need to at least work 3 months to show at least 3 months of income. Now, you travel to Spain, you submit your application, hopefully very, very close to your arrival to Spain. In order to do that, you have to do it using a digital certificate. Yeah, you either get it on your own, or the person who represents you, like a lawyer or a paralegal who has the digital certificate, can present on your behalf. You wait for the resolution of for up to 20 days. In this case, the UGE is quite good about this. Okay, it's not that common that there are delays as other visas that can take So it's important that you keep on trying. Some tips that the community gives is that you check the appointment site daily, especially early mornings. You can obtain your appointments in different police stations in the same province where you are living. Okay, and potentially you could do it in Madrid and Barcelona as well. I have an article about how to do this. It is a little trick or hack, because in Madrid or Barcelona, you can get, let's say, T appointments via UGE and not having to show your empadronamiento. So if you're empadronado in Valencia, for example, or Malaga, or you can travel to Madrid and Barcelona, get an appointment there, get your TIE there, because they're not going to ask your empadronamiento. So if you're interested in hearing more, send me an email to hello@spainguru.es and I can send you the link to the article. Okay, I recently also published a video on YouTube, on Spainguru's YouTube channel, right? And there are also for urgent cases, for certain circumstances where you can get an urgent appointment, right? So this is how you get your TIE. This is the normal way, and this is the hack in Madrid and Barcelona that I just mentioned. Okay, now let's talk about taxes and social security. So social security, how much you will pay, right? For the first 12 months, normally you pay between 80 and 100 euros a month, and in some so this is a discounted period, right, for the first year. And in some communities, you will get that money back if you ask for it. Okay, like Madrid and Andalusia, for example, they will pay you back what you paid social security the first year. You will get that payment. You apply in January the following year, and in April they will pay you back. That was my case. I live in Andalusia, okay, and I'm autonomous as well. But then year 2 and beyond, they will see how much money you made, and they will increase your payments to social security, and the typical range would be around 300 euros per month, but it could go up until 590 euros depending on your income. Now, what it includes, those payments: access to Spain's public healthcare system, subsidized medicines. This is also very interesting. Okay, if you use a lot of medicines, there's a big difference between paying the retail price versus the subsidized price. retirement and disability coverage, okay, and parental leave and sickness benefits. Okay, so it's important that you budget for these payments alongside your taxes, right? You have to pay taxes and social security, right? Now, little ballpark figures for illustrative purposes. If you make 30K a year, around the minimum threshold to apply for the digital nomad visa, your total burden will be around 25%, including taxes and social security. Okay. And if you make 60K, it will be 30%. Okay. Again, average numbers without taking into account allowances and deductions or anything, just so that you make yourself an idea how much money will be in your pocket after you paid all this. If you're making 100K, 35 to 40%. Okay. So this is not tax advice. And of course, if you want to know more about taxes, there's a Spainguru free tax webinar that you can join anytime and watch the recordings on Spainguru's YouTube channel. Now, that's registering as autonomous trigger tax residency. This is a gray area actually, and it is explained via this case. For example, someone arrives in Spain on September 2024. So the most common condition to become a tax resident in Spain is that you spend in Spain more than 183 days in Spain, physically in Spain, regardless of your immigration status. And those days don't need to be consecutive. Okay, and it is for a calendar year that goes from January 1st to December 31st. That is the tax year in Spain, different from the immigration year, which is a natural year. Now, this person arrived in September 2024, applied for the DNB in October, was approved in November, and registered as autonomo in December. But this person arrived after July 2nd, therefore spent less than 183 days in 2024. So this person is asking, like, how do I pay taxes? Should I pay taxes? Am I a resident? Am I not a resident? Am I a resident because I became autonomous in 2024? And an expert said this is a particularly gray area as you weren't resident until you got your TA card, so you weren't even officially allowed to work. Okay. So you're supposedly to pay tax in the country where you're physically working. So strictly speaking, on any work performed since September. So if you ask a tax advisor, normally this tax advisor familiar with the digital nomad visa, with these cases, will say that for the work that you invoiced as a digital nomad remotely for non-Spanish companies, etc., and you were less than 183 days in Spain during that year, for that work you need to pay taxes as a non-resident. Okay, so that is 24% effective tax rate, right? And then the following year you will become a tax resident and you will be paying taxes as a So every quarter you pay these two things, these two taxes, let's say, and then the annual VAT tax is in January, and the annual income tax is in at the end of June, 30th of June. Okay, you will also have to, once you become a Spanish tax resident, you will have to declare the net value of your assets and rights held abroad via the 720 form. Okay, and this is by categories. For example, bank accounts, real estate, cryptocurrencies, investments, depending on the type of investments. Now, for example, you have is 50K per category of bank accounts. If you have two bank accounts with 25,000 euros, the whole bank account category is 50,000 euros. Therefore, you need to declare the existence of these two bank accounts and how much money there is inside. Okay. In my opinion, I try to do this, these declarations, these filings by myself, even if I'm a Spanish speaker and I have been working in companies for quite a few years. And I'm telling you, it takes a long, long time to stay updated and to not make mistakes. I highly recommend you hiring a tax advisor or a gestor, okay, or accountant that files and handles this for you, because otherwise, I'm telling you, it is quite risky and it's a very, very time consuming. Okay, you can find online gestores on Spainguru.es and tax advisors as well, and even financial planners that I have personally vetted on Spainguru.es. Now, let's talk more about going deeper into the net salary that you will get, but on a monthly basis, so it makes more sense to you. The minimum threshold for the DNB is 2,750 euros. Total deduction, the income tax will, let's say including the deductions, okay, for the income tax would be around 15%. Social Security, once you pass the first year, would be around 440 euros, okay, per month. Now the total deduction would be around 31%. Okay, as you can see, it progresses towards 39% if you're making 10,000 euros per month. Okay, this is also another way of seeing it. If you want to know more about taxes, you can join my free taxes webinar that I hold every 15 or every bi-weekly or every 3 weeks. So yeah, you can watch also those webinars that I uploaded to YouTube channel. Now let's talk about visa renewal. Visa duration renewal timeline. So your digital nomad visa depends how long they will give it to you, whether apply from a consulate or if you apply from Spain, depending on the contract that you're providing, or depending on your certificate of coverage duration. Okay, but if you get the maximum after 3 years, you will have to renew it for 2 more years, right? Total 5 years, and then potentially you could apply for the long-term residency, which is much better, much better, because it gives you work permit. You don't have to renew it before 5 years, and it is, let's say, a gained right. It is you have less stay in Spain requirements. So yeah, definitely something you should go for if you plan to stay in Spain for the long term, right? So yeah, if you're granted the visa from a consulate, you have officially the requirement to apply for your TA residency card within 30 days of arrival. This is not the case if you get your visa from within Spain. Of course, that will happen later after you get your visa in Spain, right? But remember that regardless on when your residency card expires, remember that you can start your renewal process 60 days before the TA card expires. So you have to see the expiration date on your TA card 60 days before you can submit already your renewal for your digital nomad visa. Okay, it's important that you don't wait until the last minutes for doing this, okay, because the more time you have on your behalf, the better. If things turn bad, you know, it's important to have time to get them straight again. Let's talk about citizenship, potential pathways to obtain citizenship. And we're going to talk only about bioresidence. There are many ways to obtain the Spanish citizenship, but the most common one is because you were a legal resident in Spain. Now, the countries in gray, okay, this includes USA, UK, and all those countries in gray there in the map, normally have to stay at least 10 years of legal residency in Spain in order to be eligible to apply for the Spanish citizenship. But Spain has agreements with many other countries, in red in the map, Latin American countries, Philippines, and other countries, they can apply using the fast track nationality, it's called. So after only 2 years of legal residency, they can apply for the Spanish passport. It's important to notice. And of course, the digital nomad visa counts towards the residency requirements. For example, student visa, it doesn't. What's different when you renew your visa? Just I can't make this more citizenship. Now, it's going to give you some tips for smooth renewals. Keep the documents organized from day one, income statements, invoices, client letters. Be very organized. Social security payment records if you're self-employed or autonomous. Monitor your income to ensure you meet the threshold every single month. Update your empadronamiento. Remember it has a 3-month validity. Okay. Set reminders to begin the renewal process at least 60 days before the expiration of your TA card. Gather documents 4 to 3 months before expiry. And get a new background check from Spain with no pending legal issues. Okay, a police record. Antecedentes penales in Spanish. Okay. What do you do when your certificate of coverage or A1 is expiring? Right. So typically they are issued for maximum 2 years. It's very difficult to renew. Okay, so you have to have a strategy from this when this happens, because usually they will grant you the residency for up to when the coverage is, right? So either you apply for a renewal in your home country, which is not always granted, switch to autonomo, okay, and register with Spanish Social Security. Be careful with the gaps, okay? So always do this with legal help. Convince your employer to register in Spain Social Security, which potentially could give you Beckham law eligibility, okay, or to keep it, right? Leave Spain temporarily, which may reset the clock, okay? So you left Spain, and potentially you are not complying with the requirements that I previously mentioned. And consider immigration pathways such as arraigo. Arraigo is when you apply for residency, but you have to be irregular, okay? You don't have a regular permit. But after 2 years of presence in Spain, you could potentially apply for a residency via this arraigo route. I have a video about that, talking about all the different kinds of arraigo, okay? But it is a pathway when your digital nomad visa ends, okay? Switching to non-lucrative, if you have the funds or passive income, okay, or savings, that's a valid way. Work permits, also just applying for ordinary work permits as a self-employed or as working for someone else with a sponsor or that provides you a job contract from Spain. Okay, all these are valid pathways, but you need to time them correctly and go with legal help, in my opinion. So yeah, be careful, because some UGE renewal rejections have been based on expired A1 coverage, and Spain expects continuing. So it's important that you have the strategy laid out correctly in order to continue to live in Spain legally and without headaches, okay, without hiccups on the way. Remember that you can use Spainguru.es for absolutely free. Join the newsletter, watch the YouTube videos, read the articles, and join the Spanish Digital Nomad Visa Facebook group with more than 17,000 members. Okay, you can ask your questions there anonymously or not. Join my webinars, 6 webinars, all of them are free every 15 days or every 3 weeks. And you can find the experts that I told you. All my immigration experts are knowledgeable about the digital nomad visa, and they have had hundreds of cases. They know the ins and outs of this visa. So if you plan to go with immigration expert help, I highly recommend you going on Spainguru.es and engage with them. Ask them what they cover, what's the price, shop around, because they have 3 recommendations out there. And tax advisors, important also, and also tax advisors who are familiar with the digital nomad visa is also important. Of course, on Spainguru.es, financial planners, and all the auxiliary services like health insurance, medical certificates, sworn translations you will for sure need, potentially apostille services in the US and UK, private apostille services for expedite services. So that's very interesting. Just go on Spainguru.es and check what there is there for you. And you can always send me an email to hello@spainguru.es. I always answer my emails. So yeah, let's stay in touch. And now let's go to the Q&A session. Remember that if you have to go away earlier for some reason, you can leave a review. There's a red button on the top. It redirects you to Trustpilot, and it really, really helps me and others to find this content. So I would really appreciate it. Now let's go to the questions and see. I see one here. What do I do if I'm short of 130 euros on monthly income for a family of 3? Potentially provide savings. Okay. This is important. I think I went through that. And then I see a comment here from the same person. By the way, thank you for joining today. I hope you're doing well. Yes, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking. I hope you're doing well too. I work remotely for a UK employer. They're fine with me working from Spain. The only confusion right now is that my UK visa is expiring January 2026. After that, I don't have the right to live or work in the UK. So how can my UK employer will continue my employment if I don't have the right to live and work there? Never thought of that thing. I'm really in confused state thinking who can answer this question. Webinar, if you're part of the community and you like the community, or if you read any of the content that I just mentioned, you could also mention that potentially it was helpful to you. So yeah, definitely leave a review if you can, because it really helps me and also motivates me. I mean, let's be honest, if you say something beautiful and nice about what I do, it always helps. I'm a human, I'm a person, and when I read something nice, it's always nice to read it. So yeah, definitely. I have legal service lined up for my DMV, great. And I want and that's good. I want to ask which country tax will pay initially if I move on DMV visa, UK or Spain. Right. So this is the one question that I see here. Well, it depends when you move. It depends when you move, right? If you move to Spain and you become a Spanish tax resident during the same tax year, normally you would be paying in Spain. But if you're still, for some reason, liable to pay a tax in the UK, because I don't know the UK rules of taxation, what I know is that there is a double taxation agreement. So whatever you pay to Spanish authorities in terms of tax, you will credit that towards your payments in your origin country. Okay, this is a special case for the US passport holders, because they always have to file taxes regardless on where they live. So when they start paying taxes to Spanish tax authorities, remember that because of the double taxation agreement, you can credit those taxes that you paid abroad to your tax authorities in the US. Okay, and you will normally you will not pay taxes, you will just file taxes in the US. But yeah, always check with a tax advisor who is familiar with these cases. On Spainguru.es, my tax advisors are used to cases of people who move from the UK with different types of visas. Definitely, if you engage and you with them, and you consult them for 1 hour, make a list of questions. Join my webinar for taxes, who can give you more context. But yeah, definitely, that will be my answer. What is the timeline to get the DNB if I start from scratch from today? So if you're applying from within Spain, you need to gather documentation. So the A1 form, if you're applying as an employee, it takes a few weeks. Okay. If you're applying as a contractor, at least 3 months of payments. You need to obtain your police checks, your ACRO. That takes 5 weeks or 6. So yeah, generally, you need to start gathering documents 3 months before, 4 months before, and then travel to Spain and apply from Spain. If you apply the following day in which you enter, it's 20 days to get an answer, right? So do the math, and that's what it is. Great. I'll see you in the webinar. Okay. I have a regular work in UAE, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining today and for asking. Let's display that question. Have a regular work in UAE and also have a sideline remote work from Philippines. Am I still allowed for DMV? Yes. I mean, it is not the fact that you work in the UAE and Philippines that can make you ineligible or not. It's the kind of work that you do. If you can provide the right documentation and make your case for remote work with a minimum income threshold, and how you frame your documentation to comply with all the requirements that we've been through. Okay, but it has to be remote. So the sideline work, I understand, you have regular work in the UAE, that wouldn't count if it's not remote, right? Unless you can make it remote and state it as remote in the different certifications that you provide, etc., right? So yeah, hope that explains it. All right, guys, I really appreciate that you joined today. I really like that you have asked questions, and I will send you the recording of this webinar today. Remember to leave a review if you like, if you want to help me, and help others find this content. And I stay in touch with you. Send me an email if you need anything else. Join the community and watch the videos. Join the newsletter. All this is for free, and I will send you the recording later on. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care, and goodbye.